The future of music.
The future of music. The future of music.
The future of music.
The future of music.
The Future of Music podcast.
Hey there again, and welcome back, by the way, to the Future of Music podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive in the future of music. As always, I am Ryan Withrow here, and I've come back to my spaceship for those of you watching. I think I just forgot to turn off the lights that are in the background. There are like way too many of them, but it's okay. It's all right. We'll go with it. We'll roll with it. I also have Jonathan Boyd here. I don't know if anybody's familiar with this guy, but he tends to be like the co-host and stuff. So there he is. Jonathan, it's good to see you. First of all, you're in a new location also. Where are you even at in the world right now? What are you doing?
You know, I think it takes me about 10 minutes to realize where I am every single time. If I'm in a store or something, I'm looking at pants or clothes and I'm like, what day is it? Where am I? What year is it? And then I have to like look at an email of a flight ticket or something. Oh yeah. So I'm in Iceland right now, and it is actually 8:30 p.m. outside, and what you see from from the light from the window, it's the same at 2 a.m. It's really, really strange.
That's terrible for my sleep score on Aura Ring. Like I can't imagine that. Like I have a hard time sleeping like for a nap when it's bright out, but that's like my wife's problem to deal with. I think not mine.
Yeah, but
So
but it makes you feel better when you're at the bar and it's like 12 a.m. and you walk outside and you've had your fifth one and it's still light. You're like, oh, I'm good. Be home before
yeah.
dark.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. We won't get into your issues in life. But what we'll do instead, there's a ton of stuff going on, and we're always really excited about it. It's amazing how many episodes we could probably do on a daily basis, but this one's a little different, and I'm excited about it. So what do we have coming up?
Yeah, so today I'm really excited to dive in because we're actually going to do something that's pretty different. And I have to make a disclaimer for you in just a second, but we're actually going to dive in on the investment side of things. There's so much happening, and with any new emerging market, we all know that fund managers and companies rush in to basically try to mine the gold, right? So we're going to be talking about why like absolute behemoth fund managers like Goldman Sachs are rushing into AI. They're pushing new AI stocks. We're actually going to talk about 5 AI stocks, and this is where the disclaimer comes in. This is not financial advice. We're not stock picking or anything. We're just talking about this, right? But then we're going to go on to the future of what does AI investment look like? AI music companies, what does this landscape look like? So I'm really excited to dive in.
Yeah, definitely don't put your trust in a guy that buys a new guitar any opportunity he has when it comes to financial advice. Don't do it. That's i.e. me. Don't listen. But in any event, before we dive in, I'm also very excited about that just because I don't think it's something a lot of people are talking about because it's so kind of fresh as far as what's going on in the AI space. But before that, obviously, subscribe. Make sure that you click subscribe, you click the alerts. And for those of you listening, make sure that you follow us on the channel or whatever podcast platform you prefer so that you're notified of every single time we come out with these. But yeah, man, I was going through, and we always take time together throughout the week when we're not hanging out virtually like so. And we're always kind of like just diving into all these top stories just because it's insane how many are coming out at any given time. But this one really caught my eye because we've all heard about companies getting investments, right? We've heard about these AI music gen companies coming up with a plan, an idea, an initial beta, and then instantly being able to get funding because everybody's ready to throw cash at AI music generation and AI music tools and AI in general. But this is the first time we've heard of such a big entity coming out and having an open conversation around the idea of what is an investable stock, according to them. Disclaimer, okay, it's not according to us. That is on the future forecast for them. So, according to Goldman Sachs, the music industry is on the brink of a significant transformation due to generative AI. That is literally what they came out and told everybody. And they're saying it offers significant opportunities for the sector. And that's according to CNBC. But man, I'm ready to dive in. The big question for me, really, to start and to dive into this topic is all around like, why is Goldman Sachs actually starting to push AI stock? I mean, they have a lot of analysts that have said things like, uh, at Goldman Sachs, I should say, that are saying that they believe that the generative AI will enhance music creation capabilities and boost productivity. And they're suggesting that concerns over AI generated music are, and I quote, overstated. Do you think that's like financially fitting for them to say that? Or do you feel like there's actually an analyst on the other side saying, like, nah, I think that concern is overstated? We'll start there. I'm interested.
Yeah, well, speaking of the word analyst, I feel like a pundit on CNBC. We're on and we're talking about late night financial advice or something like that. But no,
Yes.
really, think about it. What does Goldman Sachs do? Goldman Sachs is a fund manager. They manage funds. Why do they manage funds? To make money. So, I mean, just like any new technology that comes out, just like any new trend or something that's not on the quote tech sector, there's a wave of capital, there's a wave of money flowing in one direction, and they're trying to capitalize on it. That's what it is. They're trying to surf the wave. So if I just take a step back and I just use, first principles and just think about, okay, what does Goldman Sachs do? They try to make money, and
Hmm.
they make money by making other people money and taking a cut of it, basically, right?
Yep.
So in my mind, I mean, we have this show, right? We talk about the future of music. We've talked about AI stuff so many times that I think it comes up almost every episode because it's just developing so fast. So many things are coming out. So many artists are getting into it. There's so much news. There's so much to talk about. And I really think that the reason that we're even talking about this, or that they are talking about it, is to surf the wave. I really think that's why. And in the we can go super deep on this, but when they say the concern of is AI generated music, is that a concern? Is that going to be something bad? They say that it's overstated. I don't know if that's just them making a comment. I personally, I can't imagine that a big company would do any sort of PR without an agenda, So
Yeah.
maybe they're trying to tell the market, hey, don't worry about this thing. Put your money in this, put your money in these stocks is fine. It's going to take off later because they know they're going to make money on it. But
Yeah.
that's my sort of cynical view. But I do think that's what's happening, at least on some extent.
Oh, and it goes further. Like the analyst quoted said something like, I have it here. We believe the music industry is on the cusp of another major structural change, given the persistent under monetization of music content, outdated streaming royalty payout structures, and the deployment of generative AI. So it's almost like take that, music industry,
Hmm.
as it stands currently. And this is stuff we've had conversations on. The idea that a lot of people are coming with this viewpoint of being anti AI music, mainly because they're like, but it's going to ruin us over here in terms of how we've made music for so many years. But just like a lot of us feel, they're saying it's already been ruined. You
Yeah.
don't understand. You're not making money at this point.
Hmm.
What did Barenth, on our conversation with him, it was talking about how he's really doing a lot of streaming on Spotify, and he's just really doing it as a social engagement, really getting people listening and just getting people to follow him because it pays nothing. It's minimal.
Hmm.
So it's funny to hear somebody like an analyst from Goldman Sachs coming out and being like, "No, this is why it's overstated. You guys are actually doing terrible in the recording industry as it stands, and this is going to be an opportunity for you." I mean, it's amazing. They're estimating that the revenue per audio stream has fallen 20% in the past 5 years. So it's there. It's clear. We know it's happening. And now, again, these people are talking about it. So it's very intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, what you just talked about kind of points to what I was saying, that they see a big trend happening, right? And I can imagine that as time goes on, and when I say time, I'm talking about a time frame of right now, weeks, months, the next few years. But if Goldman Sachs, a big fund manager or any public entity like that that's getting into a space for a profit motive, of course they're going to say things that help that profit motive, right?
Mhm.
So in terms of being on the cusp of like a new, major structural change. I keep calling it the new musical renaissance for different reasons. Maybe some of those reasons overlap, but I do think they're accurate on that. I do think they're being fair about that. Clearly, there's a lot of changes. Clearly, there's a lot of people being upset by it, and clearly, there are a lot of new things happening. Right, and again, that's a new wave to try to surf on the wave. But in terms of them pointing out that the previous payout structures are broken, that musicians aren't making money, etc. Well, I mean, in general, I think that's true. But if we look to the future in terms of what value are they trying to capture, what when we say they're trying to surf this new wave, right? What does that actually mean? In terms of the way social media has developed, we basically have seen the evolution of these what we call social platforms, right? Obviously, MySpace, Facebook, et cetera. Now TikTok, and then ChatGPT isn't a social element, but it's just an example of these new social platforms that are coming out. And every time something, let's just call it a platform, comes out and it offers somebody an opportunity, it's just like the gold rush. You're going to have users rushing onto the platform to get what's in it for them, basically. Yes, they're going to be sharing content like Threads. Threads just came out, right? So why are people rushing onto the platform? Part of the reason is just because WhatsApp, I think, or Facebook has like 1.6 billion users, and Facebook is saying, "Hey, go use this new thing." So of course people are going to go try it out. But what's the reason they're actually going there? Their personal reason and their business reason. And why are they going to stay there? Why are they going to take their time to post content on there? Because they get paid. That's
Mhm.
it. Like that's the reason, right? So what I'm seeing from a Goldman Sachs perspective, if I'm a fund manager and I zoom way out, and I'm always looking, this is, personally, I'm always looking at the flows of people, of the flows of markets. Where is the energy? Where is the money? Where are the people flowing? And whoever gets in front of that flow is who stands to make the most money. So again, Goldman Sachs, I think they're watching from a distance and they're seeing what are these platforms that are coming out? Where are the people rushing to? Where are the people trying to get paid themselves? And how can we get a piece of that? And the way they get a piece of it, like I said, is I'm just going to make up an example. This is not a blanket statement, it's just an example. Let's say platform A comes out and platform A attracts 100 million users. Those 100 million users come on the platform. Platform A sells advertising. And because the platform A users generate content, there's ads, there's ad revenue. Platform A
Mhm.
makes money. Platform A makes enough money or gets to a point where they go public and then they can be traded like a stock, right? So Goldman Sachs, what are they going to do? They're going to pump, quote, Company A. Hey, Company A is the best thing since sliced bread. Go use Company A. Go build your business on Company A. Go do everything with Company A. Why? Because it pumps the stock price up, and then they can make money for their customers. That's all of it in a nutshell, in my view.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned it's funny. You mentioned Threads. We just last week we're
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, no, they're doing pretty well. They've surpassed 100 million now at this point as far as users. People are always into the new stuff. That's why,
Mm-hmm.
again, I think the AI music stuff is just taking off because we're for it. We're a part of humanity that is embracing every new thing at this point that we're given, which is very exciting. And I also like that you mentioned MySpace at first. Bring it back. Where's Tom? But outside of that, uh, this is where it gets interesting for me. So obviously, what we're talking about right now is stuff we're excited about. This is great. This is really good. But are we excited about it? The reason I ask that is because of the actual stocks that they listed. Again, this is their input, not ours. But what shockingly are the five stocks that they went for? They went for Live Nation, as someone to mention, Warner Music Group. They went for Universal Music Group, and then they went with Believe, which is a French digital music company, and then NetEase, which is a Chinese internet technology company. Of course, those two are the outliers from that in comparison. But we've talked about this a lot, which is why are all these big companies starting to really focus on AI? And just like you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, it's where the money's going. So
Yep.
they want to get ahead of that. But I feel like this starts to paint a lot more clear indication and picture for us on our assumptions that it's all because that's where the money's going to be going and they're all predicting that and they're all moving in that way. So we start to see, of course, Goldman Sachs being like, here's who you should follow and go
Mm-hmm.
for. And three of them are some of the major, massive enterprise companies that have already been in the game of music and are trying to grasp at straw sometimes to figure out what's going on. But they've gotten into it now because they
Yep.
realized they had to. But it's just interesting to see that with all of the AI technology that we look into, that we've presented even on this podcast, that's what they choose to really focus on, right? Because that's where the money's at. It makes sense,
Hmm.
but it's interesting to see. So my big conversation point here before we go through to our big takeaways on this stuff is, what does that mean for those smaller companies or organizations who are making a massive impact and have been working their butts off to create something that didn't exist and are potentially trying to sell it to these
Hmm.
massive enterprise companies, versus the people that have been at the top all along with something completely different? Are we going to see, in your mind, just a transition of the focus of what they do in the organization, and it's going to remain the same big entities at the top again? Or is there still room for those lower level teams to grow and go into this environment to where they're starting to be some of those top stock options?
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, I think there's two main things. One is the guys at the top. There's a phrase in investing that winners tend to keep on winning, losers
Mm-hmm.
tend to keep on losing, right? So when I say winners in this case, I don't mean to make a moral judgment as if it was good or bad, and I'm referring to the companies at the top, the big, huge companies that have been at the top for a long time. And one of your questions basically was, or I can paraphrase it into, are they going to stay at the top? Is this something else that they're going to basically take over and it's going to be the same old, same old, same old again? I think to an extent it will be. And that's
Mm-hmm.
because they have all the leverage, they have all the contacts, they have all the power, they have all the money, and they know what strings to pull, they know who to call, all that kind of stuff. That's not to say that anything that they're doing is bad. I'm sure some of it is. Just that's just human nature. But again, winners tend to keep winning, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
going to be able to take a big slice of the pie. On the flip side, let's say the little guys, right? The creators out there, the engineers out there building these new apps and building these new things. I think the same trend will continue to persist. Any of those guys, how they will basically be able to penetrate into the top, so to speak, is to build something that eventually gets acquired by the big guys. I don't really
Mm-hmm.
see, like YouTube, for example. YouTube started out as a separate company than Google, and they built it up, and
Mm-hmm.
I think they bought it for like 1.6 billion or something, or it was somewhere in that ballpark. But um, the trend that we tend to see is the little guys actually become the big guys when this happens, and
Mm-hmm.
then they kind of fall into the category of I'll just we won't go down the rabbit hole, but I'll just call them the guys at the top, right, the top of the food chain.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think I see, unless there's one option that I can see. But I tend to think that those two trends will persist. The top guys will stay at the top. The little guys who make some kind of a breakthrough and get acquired might be able to enter the top, and that's how they can kind of make a breakthrough. But really, the only way I see the quote little guys, and it's been the same throughout history, right? But the only way I see the little guys kind of taking on more of the power share, if that makes sense, I'm going to trademark that term, um, is if somehow they make entities or companies or whatever that are somehow decentralized that don't require a central planning resource, like a central company, like a central office, not an office, but an office in terms of the people who make up the company.
Mm-hmm.
And otherwise, the guys at the top know how to play the game a lot better. And I just think all of the little guys that make it to the top are going to get absorbed into the top. As of right now, I don't see it changing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree, and I almost think on the other side, you'd be way more intelligent, so to speak, in lighter terms, to see that opportunity as somebody creating and going through it. Right, that's almost like that's the dream for those lower tier teams, is being acquired. That's one of the big things. But with this too, when we think about, I think it was last week, maybe the week prior, we were talking about how Meta, how TikTok, how they are investing heavily in creating their own AI generation tools for music. And we don't see them as one of these contenders either. So for me, it's a question of, is that because, and it more than likely is, teams like Warner Music Group, Universal Music Group, I mean, Live Nation and Ticketmaster just blended into one. So like that's a massive entity in and of
Mm-hmm.
itself. But these are all music focused organizations. So are we feeling like they're going to get the competitive edge
Hmm.
compared to all these other enterprise organizations that are getting into it. But are we thinking it feels more, I don't know, we're more confident and comfortable in them being able to manage the emergence of this AI technology in music because they've been in the game of music, even though we're seeing all of these companies with the same cash flow invest in the same items and the same focus.
Hmm.
Um, is that kind of what you're feeling or seeing or predicting? I just feel like human nature is probably us
Yeah.
going risk assessment. Let's see if all these companies are in it and I have to choose five. I'm probably going to lean to people that are focused on music already, even though it's a completely different way of performing a business with music. But yeah, I'll just throw it over to you. I just thought that came to my head as you were talking.
Yeah. So in general, I mean, like I said, winners tend to keep on winning, right? The big guys, um, of course, they're going to have a competitive edge. Why? Because they have more resources. And this is, we can go super deep on this, but they actually have more time. And what I mean is they don't have more time in terms of 24 hours a day. They have more human time. They have more resources. So they have the time of other people who they can
Hmm.
say, hey, go study this, go research this, go look at this, go start this other branch over here or this other department, et cetera, right? So by default, they actually have more hours that they can put into this to gain the competitive advantage.
Hmm.
The other thing is, well, first of all, that's one reason why I believe they're going to keep on winning. Another thing is the concept of consolidation. So if you look at the arc or the story that any market takes or any business sector takes, it's always the same. It starts out and there's eventually there's competition, but it usually gets to the same place, which is consolidation. So there are big companies that just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and absorb all the little guys, right? Like Walmart did that, Facebook did that, Google did that. I mean, it's we see the same thing over and over again. So as of right now, I don't see any reason why that same concept wouldn't continue to play out as it always has in history with these big music groups that we're talking about. I think they're going to be able to absorb uh, all, not all, but they're going to be able to absorb a lot of those little projects that we've been talking about. And, specifically, we're talking about companies, right? Guys that do
Yeah.
startups, that create companies doing maybe some kind of AI music tools or something like that that helps the bigger companies at whatever their agenda is. And I don't mean to use the word agenda as a negative thing, just whatever they're planning on. But speaking of that, you mentioned the word human nature, and you also mentioned something interesting that I want to hit on, which is, do you think that these big companies are going to be able to manage all this AI stuff? I'm not sure if you exactly meant like manage manage the growth, like manage all of the new technology that's coming out and stuff like that. I have no doubt that eventually they will. But what came to mind for me is the word control. They absolutely will have control over it and control over where the market flows and what rules are in place. Why? Because they make money off of it. And
Hmm.
again, not to be cynical, but I think unless a company's leader or leadership team is mission driven, then it usually goes down the line of human nature, profit motive. Let's try to lead the market, whatever's going to put the most money in our pockets.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, and I think I posed it in terms of like TikTok and all of them coming through here and still investing a ton of money, but they're not in this massive list of invest in these.
Hmm.
More than likely because I feel like I would trust my money probably just internally as I'm thinking and in risk assessment. I would trust my money with specific groups dedicated to music that have already been doing it, right? So for me, when I look at Warner Music Group versus TikTok, and I think, who should I invest money in based on growth of AI
Mm,
music technology?
see.
I start to think, I mean, TikTok's got a lot of money. They know what they're doing, sure, but ultimately, who's got like all of the context necessary for everything music, just like music,
Hmm.
period, full stop.
That's true.
It's those companies that it's like TikTok's probably going to run into issues. They'll solve them, but they'll probably solve them in 3 days.
Hmm.
Whereas Warner Music Group can solve that in 3 seconds because they have the people, they have the resources, they can fix things, they can dial that in. But yeah, it's crazy to me. It's awesome too. All very interesting stuff. Obviously, We love to see it because, we need content for the
Mhm.
podcast, and we have endless amounts, but this is really good conversation points for us and stuff that we have been mentioning for a long time now,
Yeah.
on the podcast, off the podcast as well. And we're finally seeing all of these articles come out, all of the conversations happening that we were predicting would happen very soon. And it's super quick, as we
Mhm.
also predict. I mean, we've been doing this focus dedicated on podcasts for a month, 2 months, maybe a month and a half.
Mhm.
And we started with, I wonder when the conversations start to happen for stock trading. Done. We've got interaction and open statements from people like Goldman Sachs. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. So again, not financial advice, but what are your closing thoughts on this move in the market that we're seeing?
Yeah, so it depends on what kind of perspective that you want to have on it and why you want to listen to the news that we're talking about right now. So, from an investment perspective, if you're considering, if you're a music aficionado, I don't even really know what aficionado means. I think as, a,
I don't know how
as
to
an
spell it.
appropriate as an
I have
appropriate
no
place. I
idea how
think I
to
do have
spell
how
it.
to spell it. It's actually a Spanish word, but um, if they say invest. I feel like I'm pulling out all the investment quotes today. That's why I feel like I'm on CNBC right now. Um,
It's also because
but
you're
but
holding the
well,
microphone,
I
I
feel
think.
like I'm
I
holding
think
a beer
it's
too, so that makes it weird. But yeah, so from an investment perspective, again, they say in general, invest in what you know, invest in what you like. So what you like is what you're going to pay attention to, which means it's what you're going to learn about, which means that's what you're going to know about, which means you have more insight than other people do into a certain segment of the market. So
Mm,
in this case, obviously, we talk about the future of music. This is our area of expertise. This is our sandbox, right? This is what we look at all day. This is what we talk about all day, not only on the podcast, but literally all day. This is what we talk about. So
mhm.
if that's you, I think you have an edge for picking if you're interested in stocks. That's another conversation. But I think you have an edge in picking what do you think is going to grow. I think more importantly, the question is what do you think is going to flow in terms of where is the money going to flow into, right? Where are all the good projects? Who's doing what? What are people actually using? What kind of tools are users actually using? What's going to have a long term use case? That's the area that I would personally be looking. But from a different perspective, if it's not from the investment perspective, I would say, let's say if you are just a listener, a music fan, maybe you play and you're just kind of watching from the sidelines, right? Uh, Obviously, this is going to affect you if you're an artist, or if you're an upcoming artist, or if you want to be an artist, or if you want to do anything really in terms of trying to make some kind of a living in the music industry. Clearly, this affects you. Goldman Sachs is in on it. They know something you don't know. And this is the future, right? As of right now, I think we can safely say that this stuff's not going to go away. I think that it probably is overhyped in the short term, but it's not going to go away in the long term. So anyway, I think kind of like on the non-investment side, if you plan on doing something in the space other than just being entertained, then you got to keep up with it. You got to listen to a podcast, look at the news, not actually CNBC or the nightly news, but the AI, the music news, right? And keep up with what's going on there because it does directly affect you. And being, let's say, a first adopter, early adopter to a new platform like Threads, TikTok, for example, all of that kind of stuff has the ability to get you to where you want to go. So that's what I would say.
I think that really for me, it comes down to kind of what you're talking about, which is what is your end goal? If
Hmm.
your end goal is to obviously thrive financially because of these changes, great. That's something that you can focus on. But as a musician, if your end game is to just be able to play and express yourself, cool. That's fine. But I
Hmm.
think the majority of people that are like, I want to do this music thing are all wanting to make money doing music. So I really think that as a musician myself, I focus mainly because I need to see what I need to start focusing on adopting and actually
Hmm.
using and trying to figure out. Because just like, and this is a big indication, and we'll end after this, just like you have that analyst coming out and basically throwing shame at the recording industry and the way musicians, if you just asked a person that's trying to be a musician on the street, how do you make money? They're probably going to be like, sell albums, sell
Yep.
tickets, do these things. Well, you have analysts over here basically being like, that is so outdated. It is so bad. It has not caught up at all with the compensation model that it should have, it's dead. It's not working. So you really need to pay attention to what is working and start to understand how you can bridge that gap for yourself where you're still enjoying it. You're pursuing a dream, but you're actually having this leverage with everything available and understanding how you can incorporate it. But really good stuff. I appreciate you being here, John. I appreciate everybody listening and watching as well. So make sure, once again, you subscribe, click alerts, and make sure you follow us on your favorite podcaster Reno thing, what podcast platform. All right. And make sure you do that. Other than that, I am so stoked to see you all and have you hear us next time on the Future of Music podcast.